Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni says, from now on, if you enter Italy illegally, you will be immediately deported. Do you think Britain should do the same? And evidently, at least 20,000 people do. Unfortunately, these British people appear to be labouring under the delusion that they live in a free country. In fact, not just them, every European on the continent lives on a free continent, and they can actually enact the will of the people. Because as we all know, especially in the UK, it doesn't matter who you vote for, because you're not free people. You're being ruled over by an unelected cabal of activist socialist judges who have their own opinions about these type of things, and they couldn't give a monkey's fart what you have to say about it. Evidenced by The Guardian crowing about this today. Italian judges strike another blow against Meloni's Albania asylum deal. Far right, not far right. Government angrily condemns ruling that 7 men detained in Albania must be transferred to Italy. Yeah, has it sunk in yet? Doesn't matter what she says, or what she wants, or what the Italian people want. You get what you're given, son. And what you get given is a big gang of hairy-ass blokes who have absolutely nothing to do with Italy, being housed, fed and watered at the expense of Italian plumbers. So Mario and Luigi are paying their bills. Easy. I bet they're loving that. And best of all, when you get into the story, it turns out the blokes are from Egypt, but apparently it's not safe in Egypt. They only get 20 million tourists a year. So we'll get into the story and I'll read you it, but I've got one question to kick things off. How many tourists do you think visited Helmand province in 2007? Answers on a postcard. Right then, so this is just more evidence of the fact that you can't do anything. I almost feel as if I was a bit too judgmental about the Conservative government, because obviously some of them, the likes of Rees-Mogg for example, he's unlikely to be massively pro-illegal immigrant, is he? He lives in a country manor in the southwest. I don't think he's sitting there going, you know what we need round here, Jeeves? What's that, Mr. Mogg, sir? Well, I really feel like the scullery would be improved by, putting 15 to 20 masturbating Egyptian tramps in it. Marvellous, sir, I'll get on that. That's not happening in the Mogg household. There's definitely going to be some Conservative politicians who would have actually liked to have seen the numbers go down and didn't want to import a million waifs and strays from all 4 corners of the globe. But what's obviously happening is, thanks to the likes of another one of my nemesis, Philip Rutnam, and our activist Home Office, which appears to be staffed entirely by clones of Shamima Begum, you can't do anything about it. It doesn't matter what the politicians say. It seems as if these unelected bureaucrats have absolute power. And if the Prime Minister of Italy can't get anything done, what makes you think the Prime Minister of England or Sweden or Denmark could get anything done, regardless of what they think? So, I'll read this farcical story and obviously take the piss out of the brain-dead, emotionally incontinent socialists that wrote it, and then we'll sum up, shall we? Let's have a read. Italian judges strike another blow against Meloni's Albania asylum deal. Italian judges have ordered 7 men detained in a migration hub in Albania to be transferred to Italy in another blow to a controversial deal between the... I'm not using their terms. They're not far right. They're just boring centrists, and in the 90s, none of their policies would have been even slightly controversial. The Rome government and Tirana aimed at curbing the arrival of asylum seekers. The men arrived at the Albanian court of Schengen aboard a military vessel on Friday after being rescued in international waters while trying to make their way to Europe. The Italian government had argued that all should be returned to their safe home countries of Egypt and Bangladesh. Look how they've put safe in quotation marks there. Safe. Egypt and Bangladesh. People go on holiday there. Do you know how many Bangladeshis who live in the UK go back to Bangladesh every year, usually to drop off, money belts full of cash because they don't want to pay tax on any of it? Right, we've all seen them getting lifted in the airport, so don't start whinging about that, lefties. It's lunacy. If unelected bureaucrats can just decide on a whim that any country isn't safe for human rights, and they decide what human rights are, then there is no immigration system. Egyptians can just rock up anywhere in Europe and you can't deport them no matter what the general public think about it. And there's another question for you. What percentage of Italians do you think genuinely want to see tens of thousands of unvetted Egyptian men wandering the streets of Rome. How many? What do they bring to the table? Well, I'll tell you what they bring to the table. Appalling personal hygiene and big floppy cocks. That's what they bring to the table. Anyway, one man who was originally from the group was taken to Italy after he was deemed vulnerable. Again, no details. He's just vulnerable. Of course he is, yeah. That's why he dragged a canoe into the ocean, leapt on it, and then paddled 40 miles, because he's vulnerable. Yeah, sounds fit as a fiddle if you ask me. Stephen Hawking was vulnerable, and they didn't pull him out of a dinghy in the middle of the ocean, did they? Monday's ruling marked the second time that Italian judges have ordered the return of people from Albania to Italy, further raising questions about the EU's plans to establish migration processing and detention centres outside the bloc. Meloni condemned the judge's decision on Monday, blaming politicised magistrates who would like to abolish Italy's borders. So she's 100% right then. Another political sentence, not against the government, but against Italians and their security. Yep, and the Deputy PM's right as well. But there's nothing they can do about it. They're totally toothless. Under the deal, men from countries deemed safe and intercepted in international waters while attempting to cross from Africa are supposed to be held in Albania and then processed. The scheme, which excludes women and children and vulnerable individuals, so they're not being overly aggressive with it either. They're almost being reasonable, especially when you can just claim a 6'2" bloke, 19 years old, with forearms like Popeye is vulnerable on a whim. And it could process up to 3,000 men a month. However, since the hubs were opened on the 11th of October, so over a month ago, only 24 people have arrived in Albania, and after Monday's ruling, all of them have been sent to Italy. Brilliant. So what do you take away from this story? It's the same all across Europe. The continent is done. Put a fork in it. If you can chat up a lass, doesn't matter if she's got a head like a melted welly, pick up some bird from the United States or somewhere civilized in Asia, Japan or something, and get yourself over there. Because at this rate, by 2028, you won't be able to take the dog for a walk without getting fingered by an unvetted migrant man. And yeah, it's going to be tough taking the dog for a walk when you've got a severe limp. All right. So my advice is, I mean, Peter Hitchens said it again about 10 years ago, and everybody mocked him for it. If you can get out, do it. Because Europe is ruined. It's got to kick off massively before it gets any better. Unelected bureaucrats are ruling the EU with an iron fist, and it doesn't matter who you elect, and it doesn't matter what you vote for, you get more of this. When Meloni won the election, do you honestly think all the people voting for Meloni and Salvini, do you think their top priority was importing Egyptian men or Bangladeshi men? Do you think that's the reason they ticked the box with Brothers of Italy wrote on it? Because I don't. It's just authoritarianism. And the UK is even worse. The dictionary definition of Orwellian. And they've just announced that they're going to, well, I mean, I'll quickly cover it. GB News is getting slammed by Ofcom, yet another authoritarian organisation with absolute power, because he shared official government data that they didn't like. And I'm not done yet either. Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson had two bobbies knocking on her door, saying she'd committed a non-crime hate incident. She couldn't be told what she'd said, and she couldn't be told who the accuser was, just that they were a victim. And best of all, Rachel Maskell has submitted an early day motion to the House of Commons for a Gaza family visa scheme. So you'll be getting a couple of 100,000 of them boys moving in soon as well. And if you don't like it, there is less than naught you can do about it. Brilliant. So my advice, I'm copying Mr. Hitchens' advice. If you're young enough and healthy enough to get a spousal visa from some bird in Alabama who looks like she drove a motorbike through the ugly rainforest without wearing a helmet, take her up on it, because you're in serious bother. As I said, long term, it will eventually get better, but it's got to massively kick off first, and they're going to have to go through all of these agencies in the UK like a dose of salts. So don't despair in the very, very long view. We'll get there in the end, but I wouldn't recommend being there for what's obviously going to come, because it's only been 6 months and Labour have exceeded my wildest expectations for just how much damage they were going to do. So that's my advice. I'm copying the extremely miserable boomer and advocating white flight, but not just from a neighbourhood, from a country. Let the Egyptians and the Somalians have it. They'll soon move out once they make it look like the country of origin. All right, so we can move back eventually. We'll just have to tidy up a little bit. But that's just my opinion. If you're optimistic and you think it's a fantastic idea to import hundreds of thousands of Gazans and allow the judges to steamroll over elected officials, you let me know in the comments, all right, so we can all point at you and laugh. All right, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you all tomorrow. Toodle pip. Cheers.